Welcome to Straight Talking with Kelly, where real conversations happen. This is where you'll meet the most intelligent, creative, and talented people who come to share tips, resources, and knowledge. Today, I have with me Dr. Gina Fromer, who is a doctor of philosophy in organizational development and leadership. We're going to discuss key points from her dissertation about what it takes to go from generational poverty to executive positions later in life. This is a part 2 episode. I recently interviewed Dr. Fromer where she talks about her position as the president and CEO of the Glide Foundation. So now we're going to talk about her dissertation and to find out what that's all about. So welcome, Dr. Fromer.
Hi, I'm back a few minutes later. Thank you, Kelly.
So, what's your why for wanting to explore the various factors in childhood and the role of resilience that has aided in the transition out of poverty for Black women?
Yeah, this is near and dear to my heart, Kelly. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about my dissertation. I have a PhD in organizational leadership and development from the University of Arizona Global Campus. And this research that I did to complete my dissertation came about because I started learning more about Black women and Black girls.
Okay.
And what I found out was that Black women live in poverty at a far higher rate, 22%, than their white counterparts, right? 7.1%, right? Okay. 67% of executive leadership positions are held by white men compared to 1.4% by Black women, right? Yeah. Indicating almost that Black women are significantly underrepresented, which we already know, right?
Yeah.
Black children live in poverty, Kelly, and if you're a Black child in poverty, you grow up to be an adult in poverty 92.7% of the time. Wow. That's too high.
Wow.
What does that tell you is that there's a generational cycle happening. One gets out. Here you go again, hamster wheel. One gets out. There's no opening up of Black children being able to have a natural attrition out of poverty. Mm-hmm. It's a cycle, right? Okay. So the underrepresentation of Black women in executive position is tied to a host of societal factors that can hinder the opportunity for leadership emergence for these women. And so understanding all of that research, what I was doing just in my studies, I'm like, I gotta dig deeper. I want to understand, why this is happening. So the whole purpose of the study was to really understand the factors that contributed to Black women's emergence out of poverty, the factors, right? How did they go from when it's a phenomenon that's not normal, how did they get out? What were those factors that helped them, right? And then you also want to understand, what do these women perceive? How do they see resilience and the impact of these factors, which may have proven or unproven been beneficial in their role out of poverty? What did they think about this? I wanted to hear from their voices how they perceived resilience, and also what factors, how did this happen? So, and then the last thing was there was a scarcity of research. So I go to look for research on this topic. There was none.
Right.
So what an opportunity, really about Black girls in poverty, or, Black women who've escaped poverty, limited research. So here I am having an opportunity to do research where I can tell a story, right, about what I've learned from these women that I'm going to interview, right? And the baseline big chunk of what I learned about Black girls is that Black girls aspire to lead at an early age. That was one thing that came out of the research.
Okay. Now, you know what? So as I read your dissertation, one of the things, I know you did the case study and you had interviewed 9 different women from different areas, but they all had come from poverty, and then
correct,
they're CEOs or executive directors in some organization. Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit more about that, and what was some of the feedback that you got from them, and how connected it was, all them saying the same things basically.
Right. So I have to start with the 2 research questions, because that gives you an idea of what I asked all 9 women.
Okay.
And I asked them, how do Black women perceive the factors that may have contributed to their emergence out of poverty into executive positions? And also the second question was, how do these Black women perceive the role of resilience
Yeah.
in emerging from poverty into executive positions? So those are the two questions that I asked these women. And, you know, everybody had a different story. And, you know, my own mind, they tell you in research, don't assume anything,
Yeah.
you know, but I'm a Black woman that grew up in poverty, right? And so I kind of had to hide that because I really wanted to understand how the hell did I get out and my best friend didn't. And out of 10 of us, 2 of us got out. What was it? And so I used to think, oh, education. It had to be education. Education was one of those things that my mom pushed, books and everything. But when I did the research, education did not come up as one of the factors in that way. Because you know what these women told me? Education was like breathing. Your mama, you knew you was getting education.
Right.
Just like you knew you were gonna get up in the morning. We didn't have to point it out because it was something that you knew that you had to do, right? And so some of the things that, and I'll talk about the factors in a moment, but this was a qualitative case study, which means it was data was collected, and I sat with these women with these particular questions, all the same questions. And so based on those questions that I asked, the 10 questions, each one got, they all gave me different answers, right? What a role of resilience, what were the factors that may have contributed to you emerging out of poverty? Here are the 5 key themes that came out. Sense of community. Yes. Remember when I told you I grew up in Bayview Hunters Point. Right. We're all poor, but I can go to the neighbor. I felt safe. I felt safe in my community, even though I know people would never step foot in my hood.
Right.
I felt safe there.
Yes.
There was a sense of community. The women knew each other. We shared things together. Huge factor that contributed to these women's lives as a key theme, right? Strong family ties. Either they were raised by a grandmother, an aunt, they were in a big extended family. The community was their family. Strong family ties was a second theme that came out as a factor that they contributed to them getting out of poverty. Emerging awareness of economic status. That means that they all knew they were poor, you know, and I'm sorry, they didn't really know they were poor. You had the nurturing, you had food on the table, and we don't know what the struggles mama went through, but you didn't see poverty like that because everybody was like you, right? Right? And so there was no awareness that, hey, we all poor. I think one of the participants said that she didn't realize she was poor until she was 8 years old, and she saw some of her friends had different cars and stuff, and she saw what she had compared to what they had, and that sort of changed her perspective a little bit. But you know, they didn't grow up with that. We poor as hell in the beginning, right? Right. It was a part of community. The fourth thing was the role models. Oh gosh, supporting leadership emergence. So one of the participants, a couple of them, they all had Black, a couple of them had Black, 2 of them didn't have Black teachers. They all had Black role models. It was an all-white school. They had one teacher. One teacher showed her how to do her hair. That was a Black teacher. They had someone who looked like them in their situation. One got on a plane and she saw a Black stewardess who was tall. And she said, oh my God, I can be that. Yeah. So they identified with some role model that supported their own desire to lead or be to be in that role. Yeah. And then that inner drive, the self-determination, that inner drive for change. Yeah. That they all said they had, that persistence. I got to get out of this. Like my sister, she did not want to be in poverty, right? She wanted to get the heck out. And so each one of those themes had different examples of how it came up for some of the participants. And so, you know, there were certain limitations in the study. One is qualitative, which means, you know, your recall for the past, you're giving me what you got. And so the information was sort of subjective, but that's okay. It was the sampling strategies, you know, so there was a few limitations, but the stories got elevated, Kelly, out of this whole thing.
And one of the things that I did remember reading in your dissertation was, like you said, that if those factors are not addressed, what happens? The cycle of
You
poverty
know, and say
continues.
all those same factors are I think all those same factors could be present for an individual, and they still don't get out of poverty. So, you know, there's also external situations that can contribute to any sort of change or deviation. I think the gist of it is that when certain things are present, opportunities for young people to experience different things in their community where they don't have to leave. They can, you know, sports and camping, and those opportunities need to be there, right? So you don't feel like we're just so poverty stricken. I got to go way over there to get this, have this experience that we're experiencing this. That's where this opportunity poor in many communities. That also contributes to a lack of people, young girls being able to get out of poverty.
Right.
But I do believe that these stories, even if it was 9 women, it was significant. And to learn that education was like breathing,
Yeah.
like you just had to get an education. In that household, education was not even something that was, you just had to get it, right? Period.
So now tell me this. So what steps are you going to take to get more documentation about leadership for Black girls and for this research in literature to continue? So are you going to continue with that, or
well, you know, my
get
book,
done?
I'm gonna be writing a book about that journey and bring the research into that. But also as I'm a practitioner, right? I'm not a researcher, I'm a practitioner. So bringing these things into my work, when working with young people, working with young women, you know, finding out their circumstances. A lot of them don't have a sense of community. They're not, they know they're very aware of the economic circumstances, right? They don't have strong family ties. A lot of these young women are on their own, have lost grandmothers and the homes that were connected to these grandmothers and things like that. So, you know, I think the dismantling of the education system now for Black and brown people.
Yes.
You see that those Black and brown numbers are high as far as young people not learning. You know, and I'm not saying that things are done by, you know, intentionality, but I do believe in my heart that, you know, if we were to begin to put these factors back in place, if you don't have a family, there's a mentoring system around these young women. You know, there are people who look like them, like you and me, that they can talk to and experience. You can do this. Yeah. Somebody believes in you. I think we need to do a little bit more on that, you know, in our communities with our young Black girls, because 92.7%, Kelly, that's the number. When you grow up as a child in poverty, you're most likely to be an adult in poverty. That number has to change.
You know, I've spent my whole career working with young Black girls before I started working with the young Black boys, and being able to change. So many of my girls ended up going to college, and when I see them, I'm so proud. So they do need to see, and this is why I became a teacher, because I grew up in St. Louis. I had Black teachers, so I knew how important that was. And when I came out here to San Francisco, the first thing I noticed, I said, wow, I really felt like Black people didn't have a sense of self. I really felt like they weren't really in touch with who they were. And a lot of it was because they don't have Black teachers. I mean, our Black teachers would go at it, and, you know, they were like your auntie, your mama.
Yeah.
If you did something wrong,
they knew what church you went to. They knew where your grandmama hung out. They knew where your mama hung out, and they would go there to find out why you didn't go to school.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. And they would tell you, you know, go get your mama, and don't let the teacher have to call your mama, because then you're really
exactly.
So we're missing that. So I know that as an instructor over at City College, I knew that when I became an image consultant, during the time I became an image consultant, it wasn't a lot of Black image consultants at all. And the lady that had trained me, one of the things I said to her, I said, how can I pay you back? She says, just make sure you pay it forward. So becoming an instructor I was able to be an instructor for all races, not just the Black women. But when the Black women would walk in and see me in the class, you could tell they got like, oh my God, she's you know, somebody that looks like me. And that is so important. And then they actually thought it was going to be easy, but I demanded more from them. You know, I demanded more from them because they thought I was Black, I was cool, and they was going to be able to slide through. And I'm like, no, you got to do the work, and I'm going to actually make you work harder.
So that is one thing that came up in the conversations too. The expectations,
Yeah.
that certain teachers did not have any expectations of them. They're not going to do it. And the teachers that mattered to them, that looked like them, had higher expectations for them. You can do this,
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
so, and then the research that I did talked about resilience as a separate entity, that, resilience is not something you just get overnight. You, based on your life experiences, that peaks and those valleys, your resilience is shaped,
Mm.
And when you're able to walk into a boardroom where nobody looks like you and you have your head back, you're walking, you're carrying all that resilience with you on your shoulders. And I have been in many of those rooms as a leader.
Yeah.
And, my resilience keeps me from flying off the handle because I know what I'm dealing with here. And, I know I'm a resilient individual. I can take a certain amount, but Black women do that a little bit too much because the stress goes on them. Can you imagine the professors at these universities now that run these universities? And we just lost a Black professor at Lincoln University, I believe, who committed suicide because of the bullying that was occurring. And of course, she might have had mental health issues, but this stuff is still very real that we experience here in our country around race. And nobody wants to talk about it,
Yeah.
And I think when you talk about it, you're able to open up and say, you know what? We can align on our values, the value of family and love, and the value of a quality education for all children.
Yeah.
Because that means that, this is what my research showed, the value of this educating and giving these opportunities in community for all young Black girls means that these young Black girls won't end up in your taking stuff out the store, or there's more opportunity for them. If we provide practitioners, say, you know what, here's a research study, here's some of the things we need to make sure is in place to give these Black girls a chance. And that's what I'm hoping. Nothing is a panacea, but at least it connotes a level of commitment as a practitioner to work with Black girls in a way that they can maybe get out of the situations by introducing things into their environment, right?
Yeah. And you'd be surprised how sometimes all it takes is for someone like you to come in, bring the resources, and get it started.
Yeah.
I
agree.
When I watched with the primed and prepped, I remember when the boys would come in, pants hanging off their butts, and it didn't take me but a second to straighten that out. And people would ask me, how did you get them to pull their pants up? And I said, well, you just got to talk to them and ask them why they're doing that. Why are you being a follower when you're saying you want to get a job and be something different? You can't go into a job with your pants hanging down like that. So the kids, they were ready. So anyways, and then there's that constant, you got to constantly stay on them. It's like you are a mother, an auntie. We have to go back to that old school stuff that we got growing up.
Yeah. A lot of our young people have lost their relatives. There's a whole generation of young Black men that have lost their dads to violence, and Black women who don't have moms or dads.
Yeah.
And grandma gone. Yeah. So, we have young babies who are having babies, or, they didn't know how to change their circumstances. Yeah. And so they might have latched onto a program like our Family Resource Center or YMCA or Primed and Prep, and they see somebody who looked like them. Yeah. That reminds me of someone who was nurturing in my life. I need somebody who's nurturing in my life. And so you got I believe that anybody that experiences a level of love and nurturing can turn their life around. I see so many of my young students. I was a case manager. Yeah. So many said, Gina, if it wasn't for you, you were hard on me. Yes. I wasn't, you were hard on me, and I couldn't stand you. I'm like, I know you couldn't. Oh, yeah. But you did what I asked you to do, because inside of you, you wanted something different. Yeah. You wanted something different. Yeah. And so, and I just think that's what our young girls right now, they want, especially if you've grown up in a situation. I'm not gonna say all of them, a lot of them want to change their circumstances. They want to not be in that situation.
Well, see, that's when we
Mhm.
need that village. People talk about that village, but it really needs to be that.
Yeah, yeah.
It
And the
really,
village is not just a family. It's the
no,
church, it's the local YMCA, it's the sports coach.
yeah,
All these people that are
yeah,
surrounding this individual child
yeah,
are
yeah,
individuals that can help that child change the circumstances. And
yeah,
that's the work we were doing at the Y.
yeah,
That's why I love my Y work,
yeah. No,
because
and I
it was,
did. I've
you
really,
know,
I thought Prime and Prep landed at the best home it could have ever landed. So
yeah,
the Y was definitely the place for it, as far as I'm
yeah,
concerned. I could
yeah,
not
yeah.
have found a better place.
And I want to give props to our controller, Malia Cohen, who,
Oh,
when I made the call
whew,
about, resources that we needed to bring this program to the organization,
didn't
she
she
didn't
step
hesitate.
through? Didn't
She
she
said
step up?
she leaned in and she said, Gina, this is a good program. I'm gonna do what I can. And
Right.
Maria Sue, came out, and same thing with our truancy program. All those programs that were birthed in the Y,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and
Oh no,
brought to life
I
in the Y.
definitely a proud moment for me. And I remember when we were at the Fairmont for one of my events,
Yes.
Chuck did a speech. Chuck Collins, the CEO of the Y at that time, he did a speech that was so powerful. He says, Kelly, I don't think you really realize the significance of us being here, because there was a time when we could not come in here.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
was just like, you know what? So
Top floor, best room in the building. I remember being there,
oh yeah,
you
so just
know.
having all of those kinds of beautiful moments and showing the students. I remember when I first took the students to one of the hotels, how they would just look around. I remember Ricky, when he walked into the Fairmont, he was like looking at the chandeliers and just like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and you know what? And to this day, he works in high-end restaurants.
Wow.
He is amazing, so just
Great.
being able to expose our youth to so many things,
But
anyways,
that's
I'm
what the
just
dissertation is about. It really was about getting at the heart of how and why Black girls don't break the cycle of poverty and they end up in the same cycle that their mother and their grandmother did. And so these women, all these women had that generational, they
yeah.
had to have to qualify for the study, there had to be a generational poverty with your mom, your grandma. And so you are, and you broke it. And all of these women are one generation out of poverty,
So
one
now,
gen out.
so Dr. Fromer, so with your work as a practitioner over at Glide, I'm sure your girls programs you're implementing as much as you possibly can to start that process of getting them in a different
Well,
space.
we're working with women, single women, houselessness women, women that don't have homes. And so
Okay.
that's one area. Families of women with children, right? The babies. We have a child development center or way upstream, getting them way upstream. And so early on, we could put some of these things in place to support families out of poverty. I just found out today that the one of the biggest things that helped children get out of poverty was the child care tax credit. And I think they're going to be bringing it back for the next 3 years. So hopefully this divided Congress will
Mm.
come together and say, you know what, this is important and we got to bring this back for families. Because that does help children. A little bit extra money can help people get out of poverty. It'd be their studies show $500 a month per month extra can help a family move out, change their circumstances. Just that
Right.
little bit of money. So why don't we invest in that, right?
It's just,
So I'm really proud of my research, and I'm really proud of how I'm doing you asked me a question, I'm doing presentations about my research to try to get people to understand that we should be doing more for Black girls and community and really for families and how to set them up, how to break these cycles of poverty.
so now, Dr. Fromer, some words of closing as we get ready to close out the show. Is there any way that the public can help you, supporting you over at Glide with your girls programs or women's programs? What can
Yeah,
you do?
I think go to glide.org. We always looking for volunteers. People come in talk about we have women's groups, we have family groups that people come together. We need speakers, we need more people hired to do some of this work. So donations, contributions, suits, clothes. We got women coming in looking for suits to go to job interviews. So things like that. But just give us a call and see how you can help.
Okay,
Glide.org.
sounds wonderful. Thank you so much. Well,
You're
Dr.
welcome.
Fromer, thank you again for coming on Straight Talking with Kelly and sharing your insightful information about the research that you've done with your dissertation. Quite insightful, good stuff. And I'm sure we're going to see some of your results happening over a period of time. We're going to experience that, and I'm looking forward to being a part of that.
Thank you, Kelly.
So thank you again.
All right. Have a good night.
And thank you to my listening audience for joining us on Straight Talking with Kelly, where real conversations happen. Please make sure you subscribe, hit that like button, and share. And I'll look forward to seeing you next time.